Hello, Saddleback family. My name's Doug, and I'm glad you've spent just a couple minutes with me today to reflect on a passage of the Bible. Now, we're actually going to look at a pair of verses today. They go together. They come from the book of Psalms, one of my favorite books to read, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But these are two passages that I've really leaned on in the past 8 years or so. I first bonded with this passage back in 2012 on a morning of really intense heartbreak. My wife and I had rushed to the emergency room the night before. We were 8.5 months pregnant with our very first baby. We were very much in that stage of dreaming about the future and coming up with names and will he be a boy? Will she be a girl? And we just were in that stage of real excitement and adventure, thinking about the future. But as we went out to dinner one night, we realized things were definitely wrong. So we went to the emergency room and we spent almost the entire evening in the hospital. And after test after test and after an ultrasound, they finally confirmed our worst fear, that we had lost our very first baby. And of course, it hit like a ton of bricks. We were in shock and it kind of felt like a dream, wondering, is this even real? And it was by far the most painful and exhausting night that we'd experienced in our short time being married. We'd been married only 2 years at the time. We headed home around 3 a.m. and we were just under this dense cloud of sadness, and we just crawled heartbroken into bed, hoping that we might be able to just grab a few hours of sleep. The next morning I woke up before Joyce and I grabbed my Bible and I headed out to the living room and then made my way into the kitchen, trying to be quiet so Joyce could continue to rest because she had had the worst night of all. And I opened up my Bible and I didn't know what I should read. And a big part of me didn't even want to read. But I knew I needed to hear God say something after the awful night that we had just gone through. And then I remembered there's a man in the Bible who had lost an infant son. After begging the Lord to spare the boy's life, King David's son died at just 7 days old. 2 Samuel chapter 12, if you'd like to read that later, tells the story. And when I remembered that story, I just thought, I need to hear from David. I need to hear from the man who knows exactly what I'm feeling right now. And in addition to being the king of Israel and being a mighty, well-renowned warrior, he was also a poet and a musician. In fact, many of the Psalms that we read today, that are some of the most celebrated passages in the Bible, were written by David. So that's where I turned, to the Psalms. And I read until I reached Psalm 27. And I came to verses 4 and 5. And all throughout the earlier chapters, I had read Psalms of tremendous happiness and Psalms of deep sadness and angry Psalms of bitterness and frustration. And all of that spoke to so many of the things I was feeling. But when I got to Psalm 27, verses 4 and 5, they just stopped me in my tracks. I was just frozen in place. And when I read them, all the sadness that I felt just came pouring out. And I just wept and wept and wept. It was like a dam just broke, and all the emotion that had been building up in the previous 24 hours of just whirlwind pain and receiving terrible news and this hard reality of knowing that we were a family of two again. It all just came tumbling out, tear after tear. But as I read these Psalms, culminating in Psalm 27, I felt understood. I don't know how else to put it. I just felt understood. I felt like I was reading the words of a man who knew exactly what Joyce and I were feeling. And I felt like God spoke to me in such a special and powerful way through those chapters. And then ultimately in Psalm 27, 4 and 5, which we'll read in a moment. And that, in so many ways, is what biblical poetry is. It's the literature of emotion. It uses creative language and rhythm to convey the human experience in ways that very few things can. The feelings that we all share, the things that we all go through. Songs and poetry draw our inner life out, and they often unearth parts of our heart that we would otherwise be unable to express or even understand. Sometimes things are going inside us that we don't even know how to get our own heads around. If nothing else, the Psalms remind us that life is complicated and beautiful and painful, and that God is with us, and that he loves us, and that he's good, always good. Joyce and I experienced a loss that we could not fix. It could not be fixed. It could only be felt, mourned. And that morning, David's words to me felt like a hand on my shoulder and like a voice from the Lord saying, I know it hurts. I'm here. The pain didn't go away. I wish I could say in that moment it all just drained away, but it didn't. We still felt scared. We still felt sad, but we didn't feel alone. God gave us an incredible small group and a wonderful family, and then he spoke to us through his Spirit in ways that comforted us in the midst of that pain. So I want to ask you, are you going through something that you can't fix? Is there just something in life that you just can't change no matter how much you want to? If so, I want you to know, if nothing else, there's a hand on your shoulder, and that there's a voice from heaven saying, I know it hurts. I'm here. I hope you'll open your Bible to the book of Psalms. If you have a daily quiet time, I'd love to encourage you to spend a few days reading through the book of Psalms and let them help you hear that voice, the voice of God, listening to your pain, listening to what you're going through, and comforting and being present with you as you go through it. Now, I've made you wait long enough. I'm going to close by reading Psalm 27, verses 4 and 5, the passage that lifted my eyes back to the Lord when they were full of tears. It says, the one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. For he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. We love you. God bless you.